Greetings and coming to you today from my dining room. And thank you for tuning in. In this lecture, we're going to continue our work with the Gospel of Luke. We are going to pay attention to the birth narrative and then to the genealogy of Jesus as Luke records it, and then to Jesus' ministry, if you will, at his hometown synagogue. Well, maybe it's a ministry, maybe it's not. We will see. So I'll start by sharing the screen as we begin to get into the birth narratives. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we have the account of Zechariah and Elizabeth and the birth of John the Baptist. And then on the right-hand side, we have the account of Jesus being presented at the temple where he is met by Simeon and Anna. And in between, we have the birth of Jesus. So let's go ahead and walk through the account of Zechariah and Elizabeth in chapter 1. So we meet them there, and Zechariah is a priest and Elizabeth his wife. They're from the line of Aaron. And so they are a priestly couple, and Luke tells us that they are righteous and they walk blamelessly before the Lord, upholding all of the commandments. And we also learn that they are old and that they are barren. Now, Zechariah receives a visit from an angel of the Lord while he is burning incense in the temple. This was a real privilege to be able to enter into the holy part of the temple and to offer incense. The incense represented the prayers of the people. Only the priest could go in the actual temple building. Courtyard outside, you had all the people there praying. And so Zechariah is able to enter into the priestly part or the holy part of the temple, not the Holy of Holies, but the holy part of the temple where all the priests could go. And he is able to enter in there and to burn incense. And again, the incense represents the prayers of the people. And while he is in there, the angel of the Lord visits him. And the angel of the Lord tells him not to be afraid, that your prayer has been heard, and that your wife Elizabeth will bear a son, to make ready a people for the Lord, or to make ready for the Lord a people prepared for the coming of the Messiah. And the question we need to wrestle with here at first is, what has Zechariah been praying for? And most likely he has not been praying for a son. Remember, they are old. And so they probably prayed for a son when they were younger, but now they're so old, they wouldn't know what to do with the son if they had one. And so probably he is not in there praying for a son. He is a faithful priest. He is upright, and he is praying for, we would guess, praying for God to send the Messiah. That was the big prayer of all the people of Israel. And so he's not there as a priest kind of praying his own prayers. He is there to pray the prayers of the people, to represent the people. And the cry of Israel at this time is for God to send the Messiah. All Israel is praying for the Messiah. Now, if you're not sure about this, I challenge you to take a look at Zechariah's song at the end of chapter 1. So when Zechariah's son is born, he spends the first half of the song singing about the Messiah, and it's not until he's halfway through the song that he begins to sing about his own son and how his son is blessed with the privilege of preparing the way for the Messiah. So the first story we get, it's a story about the birth of John the Baptist, but what's good news about that is that the prayer for the Messiah has been heard and that God is answering that prayer. Now we go to the other side of the birth of Jesus, to Simeon and Anna. And so the angels have gone home, the shepherds have gone home, and now 8 days after the birth of Jesus, his parents are taking him to the temple to offer the proper sacrifice. So when in the temple, there are Simeon and Anna, and they are in the temple all the time. They're not a couple. Many people, like my wife, think they should have been a couple. Maybe you have people in your church that are like this, to where they're old and they're widowed, and it just seems like they ought to get together. And so we have a couple like that in my church. So anyways, Simeon and Anna in the temple all the time, praying constantly for the Messiah. They are spirit-filled, they are devout, they are righteous. And again, they're not a couple. So they kind of parallel Zachariah and Elizabeth. There's some symmetry going on here. But just remember, Zachariah and Elizabeth, they are a married couple. Simeon and Anna, they are an old widowed couple that prays constantly in the temple. And so at least we think Simeon was widowed. Uh, Probably just better stop there. So anyway, so what's important here is that Simeon and Anna both recognize that Jesus is God's answer to their prayers. And Simeon has received a promise from God that he would not depart until he saw the birth of the Messiah. And when he sees baby Jesus brought into the temple, he recognizes right away that Jesus is the Messiah, the promised one. And Simeon quotes some scripture about Jesus from Isaiah. And one of the lines that he mentions is that Jesus is a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people, Israel. So Simeon recognizes that Jesus is the promised Messiah. Anna begins to give thanks to God and to speak of Jesus to all who are waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. Again, the redemption of Jerusalem, that was the job of the Messiah. And so she is speaking to everyone who's there, letting them know that Jesus is the one who will bring God's redemption to Jerusalem. He's the Messiah. So, what I'm trying to really get you to see is that prior to the birth of Jesus and post birth of Jesus, we have faithful, righteous Israel praying for the Messiah. That Zechariah and Elizabeth and Simeon and Anna, they represent righteous, faithful, praying Israel. And they recognize that Jesus is God's answer to Israel's prayers for the Messiah. And while others might not recognize him, while others might just see this couple bringing in their baby boy to be dedicated to the Lord, uh, Simeon and Anna, Zachariah and Elizabeth, they know and they recognize that Jesus is God's answer to Israel's prayers. And so they have been praying, and God has heard their prayers, and Jesus is the answer to their prayers. Jesus is the Messiah. Now, remember who Luke is writing for. He is writing for Theophilus. And remember that Theophilus is this God-fearer who needs assurance about the certainty of what he has been taught about Jesus. And so Luke already is kind of taking aim at meeting Theophilus's need. And so Luke, through the stories of Zechariah and Elizabeth and Simeon and Anna, is assuring Theophilus that Jesus is recognized as the Messiah by righteous, praying, faithful Jews. Simeon and Anna recognize him. And these two in particular, as well as Zechariah and Elizabeth, are reliable witnesses that reinforce the gospel that Theophilus has received. Okay, I can't emphasize that enough. That Simeon and Anna, along with Zechariah and Elizabeth, they are reliable witnesses that reinforce the gospel that Theophilus has received, that Jesus is the Messiah and that salvation comes to all peoples through him. Notice again that Simeon especially recognized that Jesus was a light to the Gentiles. That is good news for Theophilus. So here's the question that Theophilus has to wrestle with. Whom is he going to listen to? Is he going to listen to Luke and Zechariah and Elizabeth and Simeon and Anna? Or is he going to listen to the synagogue leaders that are saying that Jesus is not the Messiah? And so he is faced with kind of figuring out, okay, whose witness is more credible, the synagogue leaders or people like Simeon and Anna and Zechariah and Elizabeth and Luke, as Luke tells him the story. So I want you to see how this is already kind of geared up to address Theophilus. Now, one other thing about the birth narrative, I didn't spend any time on chapter 2 where we actually get the report of Jesus' birth, but I'm assuming you know that story, or at least that you've read it, or that you've seen the Charlie Brown Christmas special. Anyways, Luke 2:1. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. Okay, what this does is not only does it explain how it came about that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, that Joseph and Mary traveled from Nazareth to Bethlehem, about a 90-mile journey. Not only does that line explain how it came about that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but even more, it puts his birth on the stage of the empire, on the world stage. So when Luke kind of places the setting of Jesus' birth, not just in Bethlehem, but begins to explain what was going on in the empire and why Jesus had to travel, or why Joseph and Mary had to travel to Bethlehem, that expands the stage. So this is no longer just a story of a Jewish birth. This is now news for the whole world, that Jesus' birth is for Theophilus, Jesus' birth is for the Gentile world. The stage has gotten way bigger than simply Israel or Judea or Jerusalem. It's a world stage. This is world news. Okay, then, so that's the birth narratives. And so it's good news for Theophilus, credible witnesses that Jesus is recognized by faithful, praying, devout, spirit-filled Jews like Simeon and Anna. They recognize that he's the Messiah. Theophilus, you've been taught right about Jesus. You received truly good news, and it's for you. Now we are to the genealogy of Jesus in chapter 3. And what I want you to notice about the genealogy is that it goes all the way back to Adam, the Son of God. So Jesus is connected to all humanity, not just the Jewish people. You'll remember that in Matthew, Jesus' genealogy is traced back to Abraham. And Matthew emphasizes that Jesus is a fulfillment of the promise to Abraham and the promise to David. But here in Luke, by taking Jesus' genealogy all the way back to Adam, the Son of God, what Luke is getting at is that Jesus is the fulfillment of the human race. So we might put it this way, that Jesus is the true Adam, or the new Adam, or the human who finally fulfills who Adam and the human race was or is created to be. So Luke is arguing just in the genealogy itself that Jesus is the fulfillment of humanity, that he's the true Adam, the real Adam, the new Adam. And so he's connected to all people, he's for all people, and in him the purpose of humanity is being fulfilled. Okay, now notice where the genealogy is located. If you look a little bit before the genealogy, the story immediately before is the story of the baptism of Jesus. And then if you look right after the genealogy, we have the temptations of Jesus. And so the question becomes, why would Luke splice the genealogy right in between the baptism and the temptations? In Mark, we go straight from baptism to Jesus' time in the wilderness. No details about the temptations compared to Matthew and Luke, but that's the pattern: baptism, wilderness temptations, and on we go. Luke intentionally places a genealogy here. So why would Luke splice the genealogy of Jesus in between the accounts of Jesus' baptism and the temptations? What's the message? Okay, well, if we think about the baptism is a symbolic event that foreshadows Jesus' death on the cross. Jesus didn't really need to be baptized in the sense that it was a baptism for the repentance of sins. Okay, but we understand from a Christian standpoint that Jesus is without sin. So his baptism is symbolic of him going to the cross. And so it foreshadows his death on the cross. And so by placing the genealogy here, immediately following the baptism, Luke is making the point that Jesus' atoning death is for the whole human race, for the whole people, for all of humankind. Oh, what did I write there? For the whole, like Adam? Anyways, that Jesus' baptism is for the whole human race, that Jesus' death on the cross is for the whole human race. And so just as Adam is kind of a representative of all of humanity, so Jesus is a representative, the new representative of all humanity. Okay, the temptations. The temptations reveal that Jesus was victorious over the devil. And when we think back to Adam, Adam led the whole human race astray because he gave in to temptation and rebelled against God. And so now we have Jesus, the son of Adam, the new Adam, if you will, and he overcomes the temptations to rebel against God, but instead he victoriously trusts God. And so here's the message that Jesus' victory was for the whole human race. And because Jesus was victorious, those who receive him can live victoriously over temptation. His victory becomes our victory. Okay, so I hope you're getting this, that Luke is very intentional in terms of where he places the genealogy. And by taking the genealogy all the way back to Adam, Luke is basically arguing that Jesus is a new Adam, that there is a new humanity in Jesus. And Jesus' baptism symbolizes that, or foreshadows that Jesus is representing the whole human race when he is baptized and when he goes to the cross and he dies and trusts God completely. Jesus is dying an atoning death for the whole race. That just like Adam messed up the whole race, so Jesus redeems the whole race. And then the temptations show that Jesus is victorious over temptation, over the devil, and his victory is for the whole human race. That just as Adam's sin led to a downfall for the whole human race, so Jesus' victory is for the whole human race. And so those who place their trust in him have a share in that victory over the devil. Those who place their trust in him receive power in order to live victoriously as well. So his victory becomes our victory.